I'd like to invite you to Dungarvan, Ireland this summer for an exciting professional development opportunity. It's the 4th biannual Global Intelligence Forum, Intelligence-Informed Decision-Making for a More Secure Future, sponsored by Mercyhurst University. This year we're adding a special track in which the techniques of competitive intelligence, knowledge management, and predictive analytics are applied to higher education. It should be an exciting and extremely useful opportunity. Intelligence analysis in higher education probably does catch some people a little bit off guard because it's a new way of looking at things. In some senses, it's just institutional research on steroids. It's not intelligence in the sense that we're going to snoop around and spy on other institutions. It's really about how institutions make better decisions. For most of the history of higher education, institutions made decisions on experience, intuitively, based on the experience of the chief administrative officer, the president, whoever it was that's making the decisions. And the world of higher education has become so competitive, the economics have become so challenging that the old bromide that when do you switch from intuitive decision-making to intelligence-based decision-making is when the cost of being wrong is too high. And I think we're entering an era when the cost of being wrong is very high. The economics of the situation has gotten to the point where colleges need to be smarter and shrewder and more insightful and creative on how they do business. And so they need to learn new techniques, new ways of finding and analyzing information. So it's really applying the techniques of intelligence analysis to a new domain. Competitive intelligence or business intelligence is really, in a lot of ways, and I know sometimes my new colleagues in competitive intelligence get nervous when I say this, but I keep asking them, what's the difference between this and market research? And there really isn't, except it's a difference of scale and it's a difference of focus. It's very, very sophisticated environmental scanning, but it's also looking at what are the colleges and institutions with whom you compete. And that word itself is somewhat uncomfortable for some people in higher education because the very word collegial, college, you're supposed to be collegial, and a lot of business people are taken aback. Colleges share a lot of information with one another, but increasingly it's turning into a bit of a zero-sum game. So one of the things, colleges need to know what works and what doesn't work. And you don't really need to reinvent the wheel. And one way to figure that out is to do an intelligent, no pun intended, scanning and analysis of what's working out there. So another way of phrasing it is, what are best practices? What are the things that institutions that are prospering doing, and how might any given institution, one's own institution, adapt those things? And at the end of the day, that's really all it is. It's trying to determine best practices. It's trying to determine how better to function, how better to operate. The other piece of this, particularly in the higher ed track, is knowledge management, which is a brand new area, ironically enough, brand new area to be applied to the operation of colleges. And Dr. Irma Becerra Fernandez, who is the provost at St. Thomas University in Miami, has actually written books about this. And knowledge management is the focused, intentional analysis of an institution's own internal knowledge assets. What does it do well? How can it do the things that it does well better? What are the things that it doesn't do well? How do you get the tacit knowledge and wisdom that is between the ears of your faculty, of your administrators, of your staff? How do you get that out of their heads and collectively figure out how to actually operate the college in a more efficient manner? And so that's a big part of this. And Dr. Fernandez is a published expert. She's written multiple books on it. And then the next piece of that is incorporating predictive analytics and big data. Colleges are awash in data. I'm not so sure they're awash in information. So I don't want to turn this into a lecture, but you go data, information, knowledge, wisdom. Colleges are awash in data. Not many of them have turned that into information that they can turn into actionable and usable information to operate themselves more effectively. And all of these things, I think, sometimes are uncomfortable for people in higher education, but a new day is dawning, and I think this program that Mercyhurst is contemplating developing as part of their Intel program is really on the cutting edge. And presidents, chief academic officers, probably the people most comfortable with this in any given institution would be chief enrollment officers. They know how to do this already. They may not articulate it in quite the same way as I am, but they know how to do this already because they're the ones running point into the brave new world. So presidents, chief academic officers, enrollment officers, provosts, institutional researchers. Actually, institutional researchers should embrace this because in many ways what we're talking about is just a much more, and I don't mean this disrespectfully to institutional researchers, this is a much more intense application of things they've always done and perhaps not been taken as seriously as they should have been, internally and externally. We've got some great speakers. Liam Fahey from Babson University will work with Shelley Frine from Mercyhurst on competitive intelligence. Matt Whalen and Stephen Hyman from SUNY Stony Brook will show some practical applications of all of these techniques, things that they do at one of the most successful public universities in the country. Dr. Irma Becerra Fernandez from St. Thomas University in Miami. She is an acknowledged, published international expert on knowledge management. And then myself and Dr. Mary Breckenridge from Mercyhurst will work to try to pull all of this together for people. And so it should be really a fascinating insight and a fascinating excursion into something brand new for most people in higher education, because to the best of our knowledge, no one has ever tried to pull all of this together in quite this way to create a new administrative, actually I would say a new leadership tool for leading and guiding higher colleges and universities.